John, I'm afraid I've pulled one of the big plants that I found down the field as I was walking up along. But I'm sure you're going to tell me they're all big ones anyway.
Well, that's one of the smaller ones, really.
Well, look, she's a good specimen of a plant for sure.
Oh, it is.
You know, good strong plant. And when I pulled it up and shook the clay off the root ball, I thought to myself, oh, we don't have a good strong taproot. But as I cleaned it up, I can very definitely see we do have a good strong taproot. Taproot is the main root that comes down, and generally, if it hit an obstacle such as a tightness in the ground, whether it was going to be at plough layer or shallower, or it came on top of a stone, the taproot, rather than going vertically down, will divert sideways. But a good deep taproot, when it broke off here, it surely goes down much further than that at this point in time. And then above it, we have all the lateral roots here, which go largely horizontally through the ground. And these big roots, and they're big by any kind of a cereal root term, these big roots go into the ground and they'll bust it up. And that's why the oilseed rape crop is so good at leaving a tilt behind it. And that's why I always prefer, if at all possible, to sow after rape without ploughing, because the tilt is already there, and it's a pity to be burying it down and losing it, because it's the way you kind of use the plant and the crop to save money by not having to plough in the process. And then above the roots, on the roots you have all the fine roots, which go to grab the nutrients, and then on these you have even finer roots that we can't see by eye, and they're really the workhorses. They're the ones that grab the nutrients, grab the water, etc. But they also have a short lifespan. So a crop, any plant, it has to be continuously rooting, because it's only the fine roots that pick up the nutrients, and the fine roots cease being fine roots after a few days' growth. So it's something that's always happening. It's a dynamic system for as long as it's alive. This plant kind of caught me because it has a right big strong handle on it, so as to speak, good big stem, and it's indicative of the power that was in the plant in the winter to drive all the regrowth that's needed in the spring. And I'm looking here at it and all of the different branches, and we have a lot of branches on this plant, and we nowadays like to see more and more branches rather than depending on the main regime, and we'll talk about that damage there in a minute. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We've 10, 12 flowering branches on this plant, which are all capable in their own time of having pods on each one. And that basically means that rather than having all the flowers located at the top of the crop and very little light penetrating down to the leaves, we now have a more open canopy in the crop. And it's important because we see yellow so easily because it reflects light, and having all the flower on top is reflecting the light away from the crop, not getting to the leaves, and the leaves are still the factory generating the photosynthesis that keep the pods alive, that produce the nutrients to keep the pods alive and to fill the seeds at the end of the day. So that's very much the modern thinking. So this is what we want, well branched plants as we're going down onto the stem, and there's lots of plants. Looking at the structure of the crop, there's a lovely structure in the crop. Not too many plants in it. I don't quite know how many plants are there, John, but I'm going to guess that something under 30 a square metre.
Well, it was planted at 35 seeds
okay.
per metre squared.
So 30 would be probably the top end of
on the higher
it?
end, I would have said.
Yeah. What variety is this, John?
It's Alizé. It's chosen for me, and I haven't grown it before. It was planted conventionally on the 25th and 26th of August, which was almost too late. It's almost too late for North Cork, in my opinion. It means an awful lot. You saw the thickness of the crown there as it was coming through.
Yeah.
While it wasn't that thick, needless to say, coming out of the winter, it was certainly very sturdy, and we've often not had crops that sturdy, and they always seem to be trying to make ground through the growing season. But this year we seem to have sorted out. Needless to say, it had chicken litter ploughed down, and this didn't have lime applied to it, but it was applied in the autumn. It was applied in October, late October, early November. We applied some granular lime. We've also applied some now in the spring.
And it's fair to say that rape as a crop would be quite fussy in terms of pH, just like barley would. So you like to have the pH up for rape. You can get away with much lower pHs on wheat or oats, but rape likes to have it up there pretty well also. And as I was going down the field, John, and I said I'd come back to this, I saw a few plants where this had happened. And the minute I look at the symptom underneath it, that's straight bullet shot.
Friendly fire.
Friendly fire, yeah. So something went out here in granular form.
Yes.
That's what I'm guessing.
Quite recently it had potash.
Okay.
I know it's a bit late, but this is how it happened, and we put out potash here only last week.
If you were to go earlier when it might have suited the crop, you could have lost the tractor. That's really what it means, isn't it?
Well, there were times when we couldn't travel.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
better late than never, though.
You know, I've seen this happen in the past. It's not the first time I've seen it, so you're not the first man ever to have this symptom in a field. But it's the reason that we would always say that when you see one or two flowers in the field, that's the point at which you target going out with the fertiliser, because of the risk of the fertiliser doing this kind of damage. I've seen crops in the past where people spread nitrogen at that stage, and the volumes would be much higher being spread, and you literally just decapitate the whole crop.
Yeah.
So you can end up with a crop that has only the late tillers coming, and if you didn't have those tillers, and not tillers but stems, if you didn't have those, then that crop was almost technically sterile, or at least a mess, to say the least. So you certainly would always try to avoid this,
Yeah.
but every decision is the lesser of two evils in farming.
If I could interrupt, the liquid fertiliser is also problematic, because the liquid fertiliser can scorch these leaves, which are delicate enough. So swings and roundabouts, I suppose.
Yeah, and you know, the crop, while it looks to have a big bulky leaf, it is delicate in lots of different ways. And some of the herbicides that go on in the autumn, you literally have to wait for these leaves to be frosted or hardened before you can safely go in with some of the fertilisers. You need to just let them build their own good wax cover. But I must say, John, looking down on all of the leaves of the plant, and at least all the ones that are there today and still green, with the exception of this one, which is now unquestionably kind of being lost because of lack of light in the base of the plant, all the others are remarkably healthy. The one thing you like to see is a nice uniform colour in the leaves. You will find lots of crops where you get blotchiness, yellow blotches here between the veins. Some nutrient or other is deficient, or purpling on the edges, and there's not even signs of purpling on the older leaves here. Purpling, which is possibly a transient phosphorus deficiency or some other consequence of cold. But you know, it's a remarkably healthy plant, and well done on that. I can see one or two lesions here on the stem as well.
Yes.
Probably bits of light leaf spot that have gone on, but light leaf spot, if it is going to do damage, has probably done its damage long before now. But certainly no great signs of real strong symptoms of either light leaf spot, foma, or downy mildew on the leaves, and that's a good place to be starting from when you're getting into the growing season. So, John, what nitrogen is on that, and is it all on at this stage?
It's pretty much all on, I would have said.
Okay.
We haven't used a huge amount of nitrogen. We used about 60 kilos to start off. The canopy was very good coming into the spring, and more recently it got another 80-85 kilos. It got boron 3 times already, and it had one fungicide spray in the autumn. Weed control was very basic, because those are all the tools we have available to us. If I could make a moan here, it's about the lack of good and reasonably priced herbicide for oilseed rape. I think we're really very badly served. Perhaps it's because it's such a minority crop and we don't have clearance for those products here, or perhaps, I don't know. I think we're rather badly served. The graminicides are excellent, and it's one good reason to grow oilseed rape. You can make use of graminicides if you have problems. We don't suffer wild oats here. Indeed, we have only a few instances of sterile broom, but nonetheless, the graminicides are excellent, and they allow us to get on top of those and start afresh, because that's all we ever want, really, is a clean slate, isn't it?
But your comment on wild oats and sterile broom is largely because you've remained active against it over the years. You continuously rogue,
Yes.
and therefore you don't have a problem, and whatever that cost is stays in your pocket, which is critical nowadays.
Every summer we spent a number of weeks walking through crops and identifying problems, hopefully while they're small, and not allowing them to become major. That's not saying we don't have some blocks of ground which do have some wild oats, and we do have some rocky outcrops which do have sterile broom, but we're very keen. And growing seed, as we did as we have done for a number of years now, has encouraged us. And nothing beats a whip like losing a bonus if you've got a problem coming on. And growing seed has been a very helpful exercise purely in order to keep fields as clean as they are.
Keep the cost down in the long term.
And keep the cost down in the long term.
John, you made the comment that you planted in 22nd, was it, of
25th,
August? 25th of August.
And 26th of August.
And with chicken litter under it, you said it was still on the marginal date.
On the cusp.
On the cusp, yeah. The question I want to ask is the canopy that your crop generated then before winter. What are we talking about in terms of height and fullness?
Was in terms of height, it was very full, and the crop was about 40 centimetres or more around Christmas, and it started taking off from there really. The chicken seems to keep the ground warm as well as everything else over the winter, and come early February then it's shot into stem extension, and here we have it. It's not particularly early, I would have said this year. It's just where we'd like it. It hasn't always been that way. Usually because we were thwarted not having time at harvest time, or having poor ground conditions and not able to get it in. Early sowing, I think, is at least half the battle.
Yeah, I mean, we've always said that if you can get a full canopy in a crop that's something like 8, 9, 10 inches tall and full, that it helps to keep the pigeons away, which can be...
They weren't a problem at all this year.
They weren't a problem
anywhere.
Huge problem
other years.
But they're a hell of a nuisance when they come. And the other guideline that's often given by the continentals in particular, that for a crop to be winter ready, the crown, which is the thickness of the stem, just at this point here at the top of the ground, now I'm talking about coming into winter, should be about 8 millimeters thick, which is, you know, nothing like as big still as the little finger, but it's bigger than an awful lot of our crops are.
It was considerably stronger than that this year. And the reason is that in there then, in a stem that's that size, you have lots of reserves in there to begin to drive spring growth. Whereas if you're depending on the first leaf following a pigeon attack to come, and it's a slow recovery into spring, by having a big stem and big reserves in the plant, even if the leaves are gone, she fights back quicker, and that's the key to allowing the plant to have the capacity to come back and produce all of these stems that are going to be pod bearing, hopefully. Branches. We're still quite a ways from harvest.
Thankfully. John, thank you very much.
Welcome.